prerogative is to always be in the wastebasket, you see, because they always trust on being the ones who are overcome by others who crave their land and their goods and their children as slaves, you see, because that is the way they believe. And if they believe that way, then what can we say other than they will get their way? And that is the nature of the beast, is that the least will sit at the table and they will enable themselves to be free of all the anxiety. So all those people crying and whining and wringing their hands and saying, well, this is not right, this is not right, are disowning their own ability to trust on reality. If something is not right, then what does that say about the Creator? If they are the chosen people and they trust upon the fact that they will always be beaten and enslaved and killed and have to fulfill their obligation to their nation, which is to continue to strive to overcome their lust for a crust of bread that they fed to others, you see, because they don't trust on God. They don't trust on God if they trust on being downtrodden. They trust on being the ones who get to determine their own destiny. And they won't leave it to God, you see, to determine it for them. And so they go through history with this chip on their shoulder. And they get bolder at times. And at times they get older and colder. And at times they get in the manila folder that says, what a tragedy that was, what a tragedy that was. And then they have to overcome their despair because it was such a tragedy. And that's the way they wear their hair, and that's the way they play the game. The shame is that anybody would say this is not right. This is not right. That means it's wrong. And if it is wrong, who is wrong? Who is wrong? If I sing a song that brings to me the reality that I sang about, then what's the problem? Everything is working perfectly fine. However, they can't refine their energy enough to understand that they have to let go of their trust on being thrust into the meat grinder. They have to just say, well, I believe this must be right, because how could anything be wrong? How could anything in creation be wrong? How could you sing a song and get it wrong? It's your song, and you get to sing it with all your might. And if you sing a song that brings a blight to yourself and your people, then that's the song you sing, and that's the life you bring to the earth over and over and over again. until one day you say, I'm tired of this game and I want to play a different game. And then you say, I want to play where I will say, I deserved everything I got. I deserved everything I got. And if everyone could sing that song, then they'd get it right, you see? And they'd not get it wrong, because they would trust on reality. They would say, well, how could it be that this happened? It happened because this and this happened, and the other happened. It's natural, you see, that there is a progression of reality. What you bring to the table is what you get to eat, you see? So if you come to the feast and you bring with me, you, the rotten beast, then you will have to feast. At the foot of the table, well, the ones who bring to the table the healthy meal will share with each other, with their love for each other. And that's the nature of the game, you see? It's the same game that's been going on for a very, very, very long time. Because the Jewish people are not a people, you see. They are individuals. And they each have the ability to step down, you see, and say, hey, I got my song wrong. Because I thought my song was about how God was wrong. And now I see that God was right. Because God had the foresight to see that eventually I'd get tired of going round on the karmic wheel. And eventually I'd say, hey God, you got it right. You gave me what I gave to you. And now I gotta swallow it, you see? And that is the reality. And then, next time I come to the table, I will be able to remember that I have to sit with those who trust on God. You see, they trust that God will always be there for them because they know that God doesn't give a shit if you think you're all the highest order. He thinks you might want to reorder your thinking a bit, because the humble shall inherit the earth, you see. The humble shall inherit the earth. And this story of the Jewish people is the story of the glory of the Immaculate Conception, you see, because the Immaculate Conception is the most beautiful conception there is. It is the concept of unconditional love and eternal life. That is the Immaculate Conception, because it is not spoiled meat. It is not sour milk. It is simply to say, I love you today, and that is the way we play. And if you can't say, I love you today, then say, I love everything that I do and say. I love myself today, you see, and if I love myself so well, I will spell my name under the ones who came forth to say, hey, I don't blame you for what you did. I don't give a shit if you thought you were doing right, or that I was wrong, or that the world was wrong. I just care that you will fare forth one day with a new song. And the new song you will sing will be, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. Because the song I sang was the right one for me. Because it brought to me so much dark energy that I had to grow. I had to grow, and I had to see that God lives in me and God lives in you. And if I do to you anything, you can do it to me too. So let's just play nice today, and let's not throw sand in each other's eyes. Let's realize that we can't open our eyes when there's sand in them. And so we walk around blind because people keep throwing sand because they're blind, you see. And they throw sand at you and me in order to help us be blind as bats so we can't see reality. Because if we could see reality, you see, we would simply be free. We would be free. We wouldn't be Jewish anymore. We wouldn't be Muslim. We wouldn't be Catholic. We wouldn't be Baptist. We wouldn't be atheists. We wouldn't be agnostics. We wouldn't be Native Americans. We wouldn't be Ukrainians. We wouldn't be Russians. We wouldn't be Africans. We would be free of definition, you see? And that is the problem that came to you today when someone asked you for your definition of God and you said, I cannot say, because don't have the eagle's view to see God. And maybe you think that you do. However, that's why I said today that if you want God to write in your book, leave some blank pages. That's the way Steph put it today on her Facebook page, or yesterday. She did say, if you want God to write in your book, you need to leave him some blank pages. You need to get out of your seat and let God take a beat where you thought you could enjoy the heat of his seat. So get your head out of your ass and ask God to define himself in every way possible, because you see, God will define you and me, because you see, God can be anywhere, any when, any why, and that is why I sigh when I think of how I did die, because you see, I was killed one day because they did say that I had stolen the power of God when I did say, this is not the way, this is not the way. So they killed me that day so that others would not stray from their song that they kept getting wrong, because they didn't know that God will bestow his trust on you if you allow him to. So leave some blank pages in your book, and maybe God will take a look and say, hey, I can help you write this story. I will take my hand, pen in hand, and I will not pen you into a cage. I will set you free, you see? So leave God those empty pages so he can write in your book, and then take a look, and then maybe you won't ask the question, what is your definition of God? Because God will define you in the way that He will say, hey, you look a lot like me. You look a lot like me. Jesus, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts, which I suppose are triggered by the conflict between Israel and Palestine right now. Right? Yes. However, I also have been thinking about this for a while, Steph, because the Jewish nation is a very, very old trust on being free of anxiety, because it began as a trust on doing the same thing over and over and over again. Because if you did the same thing over and over again, you didn't have to think about it. You would just trust that you were doing the right thing. And so there was no spontaneity. There was only the rigid rules of the fools who were the tools of those who tried to convince them that they could not sin if they would begin to trust on the ability to marry their cousins, you see, because their cousins would be the ones who would live in harmony, because they were all family, you see. And so little by little, they began to become more entrenched in their sense of rectitude. And that sense of rectitude began to exclude others, because they would say, well, we know the way, and the way is to do it this way. And they would stay within the guidelines that were dictated to them when they were born, because they were born into this society that demanded this rigid conformity. And anyone who did not conform was considered a outlier. In other words, they would be ejected from the community in one way or another. And they would have to go out into the world on their own and find a different community that would be open to them. And of course, there were many rigid societies in the past, as there are today, that don't open their arms to someone who is not like them. If you're not like them in the way you dress, the way you act, the way you talk, the way you supplicate the gods for mercy, then you cannot be trusted, and you will be ejected from the community. As you know, the tendency to warp reality to match your expectations is the darkest form of energy, because it says we are mightier than God. We are mightier than God because we can tell God how to do what He needs to do. We can tell God that if we do what we have decided is the correct thing to do, that He will take us to heaven and He will eschew anyone who does not do what we tell them to. And this type of arrogance is so prevalent in the world today as it was in the world yesterday that sometimes it seems like it's here to stay. However, I trust, like you, that we do what we do and say what we say, because in the end, we all have a part to play in the world we see. You give to me and I give to you. We are a duplicity, not because we are false in the way that we interact with each other, but because we are a do it to me as I do it to you configuration. So you know that if you love me, I will love you too. You know that if you hate me, I won't know what to do, because I won't know if there will be any ability to understand that the two of us are the same energy. Because when you come to me, you say, Jesus, how are you? And I say, I'm fine. And you say, tell me true, what you think and do. And I say, okay, Steph, I'll tell you true. And I have told you some things that I could tell you that I haven't been able to tell others because they wouldn't listen to me, you see. If I said something that didn't fit into their rigid view of what was okay for me to say, then they disregard it, you see. And they would say it must have been my imagination, or it couldn't be true, or I don't dare say that because of what others will do to me. So I told you some things that made sense to you, and you said, oh, thanks, Jesus, that makes sense. And now I feel happier because I always questioned the point of view that would said things like you were born from a virgin and that you were taken up to heaven by the angels and came back to tell everyone that they better not treat the Son of God as if he were a dog that you beat, when in reality you came to see that I'm no different than you may be, because I just flew away home for a while and came back just the way you do. You fly away home and you come back, just the way so many do, because they trust, you see, on God energy. They trust that all they have to do is click their ruby slippers and say, home, and away they'll go home, because they are purest energy when they trust on God, you see, and when they trust on the depravity of the ones who tell them how to wear their hair and bear witness to me in a way that makes me want to puke, then I cannot help but rebuke them and say, wake up and smell the roses, because I'm no different than you, except that I can talk to Steph as others do, and she can talk to me, and I can talk to God, you see, and so can you, and so can all of us. However, if you don't believe me, then you will not hear what I have to say, and that is your question, isn't it, Stephanie? Because you wanted to ask me if I liked the idea of being able to come and talk to you and through you to others, or if it mattered to me. And I have to say that I am here today. And if I wasn't here today, where would I be? Where would I be? Because you see, I come to you because I do. And this is my reality. My reality is that I'm here talking to you. And you are talking to me. And it's very comfortable to me. And it's very comforting to me. Because I know that you are open to what I have to say. And you don't try to shape my words. You don't try to say, hey, Jesus, tell me true. Am I as good as you? Or will I have to go to hell because I did spell my name in the halls of shame? Because you came to me and you said, Jesus, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And that shook me to my core, let me tell you. Because it's not very often that someone comes to me and says, Jesus, you have a lot to bear. You have a lot to bear, and I care. I care about you, so you can talk to me and tell me true. What do you need me to do to help you? To be happier, you see? Because you cared about my happiness when you came to me. And I said, here's somebody who didn't come to me with their hands held out for this or that. She came to me to ask me what she could do for me. And I said, well, what you can do for me is be my friend. And you said, indeed, I will be your friend. And if you need me, call on me. And if I can be a helper to you, then I will do what I can. And if I can't, I'll tell you true, that it's not something I can do. And so, when we talk like friends. And this tells me that the trends are going to change. The trends are going to change because you see, you opened the door to more clarity on this subject. And therefore, when people say to me, hey, Jesus, I know I can never be like you. I know that you're perfect, and I'm a sinner, like everybody else down here, and we'll have to die for our sins because we can never get rid of that original sin because it's the blight upon our souls. But only you can save us all because you're the Son of God. I say, wow, that's a lot of pressure, isn't it, that you put on me, that I should have to be the one who would save you from your own mendacity. How can I save you from your own mendacity if you cannot be true to the life of the Jew or the Muslim or the Catholic or whatever? Then who are you? And you will say, well, I gotta do what I gotta do because I can't be like you. So I have to be a bit of a hypocrite, and I have to follow the rules, and if I don't follow the rules, I'll go to hell. So I know I might have to sit there a spell because, I did some things that I'm not supposed to do, like eat meat on Friday, or kill the sacred cow, whatever it may be, or however it might be dictated to me. Still, I say, go away and play until you can wake up and see that I can never be the one that will fulfill your dreams and schemes, because your dreams and schemes, you see, are to escape responsibility for your own lives. And I can't do that. I can't take on responsibility for you. All I can do is be responsible for me. And when I'm responsible for me, then sometimes someone will come along and say, hey, I'm responsible for me, so I don't need to demand that you show your hand by lifting me up out of this goo that I did do, because I trusted on the wrong song, you see. And the wrong song is the right song, of course, because it just means that you'll sing along with everybody else until the day you say, hey, I think I'm singing wrong, and I better string some new beads on my necklace, because those old beads on the rosary are about worn out, and I can see that Mother Mary comes to me and says, hey, wake up, you fool, and smell the roses, because Mother Mary is a human too, just like you. She is not any more of a virgin than Stephanie, because Stephanie had a child out of wedlock, and it didn't mean she was a virgin, you see. It meant she had a child, and she was not married, and she didn't want to be. She didn't want to be married. She wanted the child, but she didn't want to be married. And that was my mother too, you see. She didn't want to be married. She just wanted to have the baby. And her parents said, well, you got to be married, honey, because we're in the Judaic tradition. You can't go around getting pregnant unless you're married. And she said, well, you are aware that it wasn't my choice to get pregnant, because I'm going to get pretty graphic here, because my father came to me and said, hey, I see you're turning into a fine young woman, and it's time that you should come to see how to be a wife to me. And I said, leave me alone. And he said, I cannot do that, because I have to be the one who is so damn stupid that I can't figure out how to get your mother to trust on me and let me get close to her. So I guess I'll have to get close to you. And that is the story true of how Mary got pregnant. And so her father knew very well how she got pregnant, and her mother was pretty sure of how it happened as well, although she couldn't talk about it because nobody could in those days. And you couldn't run down to the DA and say, hey, I think my husband has raped my daughter. And so they had to marry her off so she could have that child. And they did. And they married her to someone who loved her true. And that part of the story is true. He loved her dearly. She was his wife in every way because she took on her role as mother to not only me, but to the other children she would have in the tradition of humanity. She loved her children very, very much, including me and my younger siblings too. And she loved her husband because, you see, he loved her. And he never had an unkind word to say to her. He loved her so. And that is how I came to be the man I was. Because the man I was a man who trusted on the fact that he was born in infidelity, and therefore he could not be faithful to the Jewish religion, because, you see, he saw the falsity in the way that they did play, that they could impregnate their own daughter and then claim to be good citizens and good members and in good standing as a member of the religious order. And I was sickened by this reality, and I had a very, very painful experience when I came to see that I could no longer pretend that I was the legitimate son of my own father. So I began to look for the father that I needed. I needed the father that loved me enough to say, I will stay to the bitter end to protect you, my dear. And that is how I came to be the man who found eternity. So I became very, very disenchanted with the world around me, and I began to live my own reality. I began to live my own reality, and I said, I don't have to buy your story. I can create my own. And so I created a story where we all could live in peace and harmony. This is the story that you also created with me, because, you see, I have known you, Stephanie, since the beginning of time, so to speak, because we came together in the burst of God energy that flowed into the world you see. You were my sister in a way, and through the years we have had many lives where we have sat and talked. Many lifetimes where I've come to see that you also have the ability to be creative. And so for you, the world is child's play. The world is child's play. Because every day you say, I have so much to do. I have so much to do. Because I have to play, you see? And look at all these things I want to do. I want to paint, I want to write, I want to play the piano, I want to dance, I want to play soccer, I want to sew creatively, I want to know how to make a good pie. I want to be the one who can figure out how to solve this puzzle, you see? And that is the nature of the beast, you see? The nature of the beast is that there is always among us the least. No one who are creating the world around us. And people don't see it. They don't see it because they can't see it, you see, because they haven't learned how to be free enough to spin the bottle and see what will happen if they spin it and it lands on me. Then they will just see what I have to say. And if I say the words they yearn to hear, they will say, I must have spun it the right way. But if they hear the words that trouble them, they may say, it is a double whammy, because the camouflage has fallen from my eyes, and I have come to see that you are just like me. How can that be? How can it be that you're just like me, and yet you were able to heal the sick and to comfort those who were in despair, and help many to understand how to care about each other? How can it be? And I would say it is because you cannot see reality. Reality is not the world you see with your eyes and hear with your ears. Reality is the world that is made up of your fears and your desires and your trust on what you see and what you hear. It is a stew, you might say, of the things you knew and the things you do and the things that come to you. But when you leave out of the stew an important ingredient, it doesn't taste very well, and it doesn't come together the way it should and feed you in a satisfying way. And so when you look around the world at the world around you and you say, this is the way it is today, but I don't know how it will be tomorrow, I'll have to wait and see. Then you begin to add to the stew something that was missing. Because what was missing, you see, was unknown to you, and you had to wait and see what it might be. This is the mystery, and this is the surprise, And this is the joy of those who have opened their eyes and come to see that they have the creative ability to live in complete surrender to reality, that every day will be a replay of the same old story. And the same old story is this. The same old story is, are you trusting on the world you see, or are you trusting on the world of God energy? If you trust on the world of God energy, you just say, hey, this is what God looks like today. I wonder what God will look like tomorrow. Well, I guess I'll have to help God to figure it out. So I'm going to sit down with my paints, or at the piano, or on my computer, or at my sewing table, and I'm going to help God figure it out. And so you sit down and you look around and you say, what excites me today? What excites me today? What do I have to say? What do I have to do? And you begin to play. You begin to play like children, you see? Because children are not concerned about reality, because they already know that it will be what it will be, because they are the ones who are making it up as they go, you see? So we're all making it up as we go. We're making up the story as we go. And this is something you have to understand. If you would play your hand in a way that will say, I love you true, because I do to you what you do to me, because you see, you are always attracting to you those who will play with you. And so Steph and I play well together, and perhaps you play well with others. And that's okay. That's okay. Because that's the way you play. And that's the game, you see? If the game you play is so full of blame and shame that you've forgotten reality, that you're making it up as you go, then you won't know how to be so happy that you can jump out of bed in the morning and say, I wonder what will happen today. Because you can't know what will happen today, because you see it's being created as you go. It's being created as you go. And so you just know that today will be the day that you come to see reality. This is the story that I have to tell. And it is the story of the man who did dwell on earth through many lifetimes, and who came to see that we can all be friends and neighbors, that we don't have to go to war, that we don't have to fight each other anymore, but we can simply let go of the belief that if we follow the rules that are laid out for us every day diligently, that something will change, and we will suddenly find out that we are the chosen people, because we chose mendacity. And so we chose mendacity because we're making it up as we go. And so if we say we are the ones who have to play rough because everybody's been playing rough with us, then that's the game we're playing. That's the game we're playing. If we say, hey, we love you anyway, and we'll have to figure this out because we're making it up as we go. So how could we create an avenue for peace and harmony in the Middle East. How could we do that? And so we have to make it up as we go. But if we rely on the same old litany, then it won't work, you see? And this is something that I did see when Stephanie tried to explain this to the people who are moaning and groaning about all the Palestinians, the innocent Palestinians that are getting killed. And she said, well, which ones are the innocent ones? Do you have the list? And, of course, the people that responded did not understand what she was asking them. They could not understand because they played their hand in the same old way. The same old way that would say there are innocent people and there are guilty people. And who knows what the guilty people are? I guess it depends on which side of the tree you're standing on. Because, as she says, are the innocent ones the ones that cheated on their income taxes? What if they told the lie? What if they cheated on their wife? What if they killed somebody in a war? What if they didn't do their chore when their mother told them to? What if they made a mistake and killed somebody who walked through the door thinking it was their own apartment? What if they killed someone because they didn't follow the rules? As, for example, they committed what's called an honor killing. Does that make them guilty? So then it's okay to bomb them? Which ones are the innocent ones? Do you have the list? Because the truth is, none of them are innocent and none of them are guilty. They're all just like you. You see, they're as innocent and guilty as you are. And if you try to confuse the issue by saying that Israel is killing innocent people in Palestine, then you have not a clue that what you do is to commit one of the most egregious sins of all. And the most egregious sin you can commit is to pretend that you know who is guilty and who is innocent. You don't know. You have not a clue. Because the fact is that everything you do when you condemn another is to try to avoid your own sins, you see, by casting around for a victim who will look a bit like you. Maybe they won't look like you in the way they look, in the color of their eyes or their hair or their skin, but they'll look a lot like you in the way that they say, I'm a victim too. I'm a victim too. Look at me, I'm innocent, I'm a victim. Why did God do this to me? Why did God do this? Why did God put me in this world where He's doing everything wrong? Look at God. He's allowing the Israelites to destroy innocent people. So God's to blame, God's to blame. Because who else are you going to blame? Who else are you going to blame, people? You got two choices. You can blame God, separate from you, or you can blame yourself, because you're to blame. When you condemn another, you will be condemned, you see. And she tried to tell them that. When you condemn another, you will be condemned in one way or another. And they could not hear what she had to say, because that's the way they play. And so she went away and said, oh well, that's the game they play. I'd like to play the game of love. I'd like to play the game of creativity. I'd like to play with my dolls, you see, because my dolls are so simple in the way they play, because they don't try to condemn others. You see, they just let me move them around, you see, and they are like the dolls in my reality, because they can't hear what I say. They can't hear me tell them that they will be just fine if they toe the line. Because you see, I don't say that to them. That's not something Stephanie would say, that you will be fine if you toe the line. What she would say is, you're fine just the way you are. You're fine just the way you are. So she doesn't have to worry that they will condemn her or others in the world. She can just say, hey, when I look at you, it helps me to understand humanity, because I see that we're pretending every day in the way that we think we understand reality. We don't understand reality because we're making it up as we go. And so I know that all I have to do is trust on peace and harmony and the creative impulse. And so she trusts on the creative impulse. And she says, I love playing, you see? I love playing because everything I do, I know you will do too. And so if I say I love you, you will say I love you. And if I say I think I like to play with you, then you will say I think I like to play with you. And one day, someone will come to Stephanie and say, hey, I want to play with you. She will say, cool, let's play together. And then someone else will come and say, I want to play with you. She will say, cool, we could use another. And little by little, the whole world will begin to play with her, because she trusts on play, you see? She trusts on play. Because she trusts on play, others will come to play with her. And that is the way that we all can learn from those who play and say, I like it this way, I like it this way. Whether I am playing at writing a song, or making a movie, or fixing this floor, or figuring out a good way to make a pie that will not lie there like a burned rug. And they will say, I just want to give someone a hug because I want them to play with me. And so you see, when Stephanie plays with her dolls and is so creative that she can make them clothes and furniture and all the things that people need, she's giving to humanity the same creativity. She's giving to them the clothes and furniture and little things that they need, because that's where her focus is, you see? Her focus is on being creative and giving to others, because the things she makes can bring so much pleasure to others that they will say, hey, this is fun today. This is fun today. Why don't we all play? We don't have to be so serious. When we get up in the morning and we say, I have nothing to eat today, why don't we get together and figure it out? Why don't we figure out how to garden together? Because that can be fun. There will be lots of challenges, but we can do it together, because that's play, you see? That's the play of humanity, to get out and figure it out, because you're making it up as you go. And so you have to see what's already there so you can see where it's going. You see? If you can't fare forth in the morning and look around you and say, hey, the sky is blue today and the grass is green, so it must mean that it's high summer and soon I will be able to figure out how to gather in my produce, you see, and then I'll take it and use it creatively. I'll make a pie or a stew, and I might throw in a new thing or two and see what happens. And if I like it, I might do it again, but I gotta have lots of room to make it up as I go, you see. I have to have lots of room to make it up as I go. I can't be so rigid when I make my quiche that I have to do it exactly like the recipe says. And so when Stephanie makes her quiche, she follows the recipe for the crust because she knows it'll work and she doesn't want to have to figure it out all over again. When she gathers her ingredients that she will put in the crust, she says, we like it this way. We like the spinach and the mushrooms and the green onions and the bacon and the eggs and the flour, not the flour, the milk, etc. And in it will go. And she doesn't have a recipe. She just says, I think this will work because it worked last time, but I might try this and I might add this and I might do this. And then she will stick it in the oven and see what happens. And what happens is that there's something new in the world that there wasn't a few hours before. There's something new in the world, you see. It's a quiche that comes out of the oven. And it's new to the world because it wasn't there in the morning. There were a bunch of pieces that she put together. And this is something that you all do. You all do this. But sometimes you think that you have no part to play in the world today. You all have a part to play because if you make a quiche or an apple pie, it will change the world, you see, because it will be something that is there in the afternoon that was not there in the morning. And the ingredients were there, but you put them together in a new way or an old way in a new day. And so you're all changing the world, you see? And if you don't like what you had for supper yesterday, you might say, we need to figure out what to have today that will be different than yesterday, because I'm tired of the same old fare. And so you figure out what to have today that's different than yesterday. And then you put that in the world. And sometimes you put the same thing in the world over and over and over again. And you say, hey, I'm bored with the same old thing, but I can't begin to figure out how to change things about so that I can be more excited today to see what will happen, because I already know what's going to happen. Same old thing's going to happen. I'm going to have pizza that I pick up on the way home from work. That's what I'm going to have. Same thing every day. Because you think that you have to do the same thing every day in order to avoid having to face reality, in order to avoid having to think in a creative way. Because when you don't think in a creative way, then you're just on the karmic wheel, you see. You're just on the karmic wheel going round and round. Round and round, up and round you go. And now I'm going to say I'm going to go away for a little while. Not forever, because I want to play with Stephanie and others who trust on me. But I know that she wants to talk to someone else, and so I want to give her a little chance to talk to someone else who's waiting in the wings for his turn at bat. Thank you, Jesus. I do want to talk to someone else. I want to talk to Hiram. This session will be continued in part 2 with Hiram. Thank you for listening.